Rupa, it is so nice to see you again.
Thank you. You too.
You and I met in 2016.
Yes.
You had just, please explain, you became the, what's called the special master or the special paymaster of the 9/11 Victims Compensation Fund.
That's right.
Through DOJ.
Through DOJ. I was appointed by Attorney General Loretta Lynch at the back end of the Obama administration, and then served for 6 years through the Trump administration and part of the Biden administration.
And your job was to take this program that had been appropriated by Congress and translate that legislation into action.
That's right. And basically my job was to make sure that those who were injured by the September 11th attacks, mostly because they were at the sites and breathing in the toxic dust, got the compensation that they deserved.
So you were, if I may, and I don't, look, and obviously, I don't mean to just paraphrase or those things. You were a parasite on the system.
Yes, apparently.
What do you think when you hear that kind of talk about those in the government that are there to try and faithfully execute what the legislation has already appropriated?
Honestly, it just makes me sad.
Right.
I spent my entire career in federal government until I left in 2022, and throughout all administration across party lines, and through all of it, every single person that I worked with, agencies across the government, their only goal is to administer the programs that Congress passed and that the executive branch wants administered according to its rules and its processes. That's what we do. That's our job.
And I was blown away. So you were trying to do your job, and I showed up in your office one day with a gentleman by the name of Jon Stewart from the Feel Good Foundation who had lobbied very intensely to get it done. And we just showed up, and you were so gracious to us, and you showed us around the office. And I was so impressed with the way that you had approached it with such compassion, but also a toughness. And you had a mantra on your, and I feel like an idiot because I'm sure it's like a managerial like hang in there poster and you're gonna be like, yeah, it's a dumb thing that I put up on. But it was a mantra. Do you remember what I'm talking about?
I do.
What did it say?
It was our guiding principles, and
yes.
It was the way that we ran the program was we wanted to be fair to claimants, faithful to the statute, and accountable to the taxpayer.
Come on. It makes me so angry. I want to smash another mug. Oh wow, this thing's really coming out. Sorry. You know, in the commercial break, I had a lightsaber battle with one of the crew members, and that's how I. And you did it. The program itself had very little waste, fraud, and abuse because your mandate was to make sure that the people who got it, who should get it, got it, and the people who shouldn't get it, didn't get it.
That was my job.
So this week, or last week, I hear they're just cutting 20% of the staffs of people. And the Victims Compensation Fund was one of those offices.
It was the World Trade Center Health Program.
The World Trade Center Health Program.
Which is our sister program.
Right. That's the one that administers health care to people.
That's the one that administers health care to people. So it's actually even more important because it provides these responders and survivors who worked at the World Trade Center site, at the Pentagon, at Shanksville, who are now sick with the health care that they need. 85,000 people who worked at one of the sites or who lived in Manhattan have been certified with one or more 9/11 related conditions. And so the cuts that were made were indiscriminately made to cut almost 20% of the staff of the health program, which would have been devastating.
And what are, in practical terms, and you know, the people love a good conversation about administration and paperwork. In practical terms, what does that mean? Does that mean people wouldn't be able to access the program? They wouldn't be able to sign up for the program? They wouldn't be able to make their appointments? They wouldn't get their medications? What would it mean?
All of those things.
Right.
It means that people who are going to sign up for medical monitoring, over 140,000 people are monitored. 10,000 people tried to sign up for monitoring last year. Those applications wouldn't get processed, or there would be delays in processing them. There would be delays in certifying the conditions as 9/11 related, which means that there would be delays in getting them health care and delays in getting their compensation from the VCF, which depends on those certifications.
Right.
It means that additional conditions couldn't be determined as potentially eligible because the studies that would have funded that were being taken away, it means that the oversight of the program, which is largely run through contractors.
The actual people looking for fraud.
The actual people looking
they got
for
cut
fraud
too.
got cut too.
What are we doing, for God's sakes?
And then they were rehired.
And then they were rehired, what, 2 days later?
About a week later, thanks to the intervention of the New York congressional delegation. Shout out definitely to Representative Andrew Garbarino of Long Island.
Garbarino! By the way, for those of you in Long Island, come to Garbarino's, a fantastic Italian restaurant overlooking Long Island Sound.
But Senator Schumer and Gillibrand were also instrumental.
Schumer and Gillibrand have been on it.
Yes.
Gillibrand especially had been on it forever. And Hillary Clinton, when it first started, was an incredible advocate for it. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it is because it's a very specific program. But in the specificity of it, I think there's something universal here. There's a ton of programs out there right now that don't have Republicans in a congressional delegation, trying to fight for it, and they're gone.
Yeah, if you don't have, it's a sad commentary, right? That the only reason that program was saved is because there were Republicans who were willing to go to the president and ask him to reinstate it. And thankfully, and I'm grateful that he did, but not every program has that constituency. And we shouldn't live in a world where the only programs that get saved are the ones where Republicans are willing to put their stamp of approval on.
Right, as long as it demonstrates fealty to the leadership or anything along those lines. When you were administrating, what are the frustrations within government? Is it, what makes it so difficult for government to be agile? Are there too many regulations? Is there too much paperwork? Do we need a moonshot to simplify things? Because I would love the idea of more efficiency and a less adversarial role. It seems like any government program that's going to help people, and I know this from the PACT Act, any government program that's going to help people is adversarial. That the people become adversarial with the people trying to get the money.
So we certainly tried not to be adversarial.
Right.
That was not our goal. But I think one of the things that sort of gets lost in all this conversation about efficiency is that part of the reason government is inefficient, part of the reason that bureaucracies exist, is because we are trying so hard to make sure that there isn't waste, fraud, and abuse in our programs. The reviews and the processes and the things that seem to take a long time, that sort of hang us up, are there for a reason. They're there because we want to make sure that we are being appropriate stewards of the public's money.
Right.
And that we're handling these programs responsibly. Is it too much sometimes? Maybe. But the way to solve it isn't just to go in and indiscriminately cut people out.
I wonder, let me pitch this. Is there a way, if we were to make, because there are tons of people that qualify for food assistance who don't claim those benefits because it's difficult. There's a lot of hoops you have to jump through and all those things. If the government didn't use waste, fraud, and abuse as a default, made that money simpler to get, like what it was in the pandemic, and then bolstered the money on the back end searching for fraud, because it seems like we're making the 3% or 5% of fraud, we're making the 95% pay a price for that. Is there a different way to jigger those programs, make them easier to access, and bolster the fraud watchdog on the back end of it?
So I'll say two things.
Yeah.
First of all, there are very, very routine and rigorous processes in place at all federal agencies to try to prevent waste, fraud, and abuse. There are the inspector generals. The VCF underwent inspector generals.
There were the inspector generals.
There were the inspector generals. There's the Government Accountability Office. OMB does a budget process to make sure that money is being appropriately allocated to the right programs.
Right.
And there's annual fiscal audits, right? So every step of the way, there is something happening to try to make sure. But those programs, all of that process only runs if you have the staff there to do it.
Right.
You need staff who understands the programs, who can answer questions, who has expertise. The second thing I would say is that if you're going to eliminate inefficiencies in programs, the people you have to talk to are the people who are running the programs. That's what I did when I started at the VCF.
So that's fine that it's a clause line. I disagree with you a little bit. Whenever I have a situation like that, I rely on teenage boys.
Yeah.
I find them judicious and hormonally balanced. And I like to let them loose in an organization and just go, have at it, boys. It must be so incredibly frustrating to see that. Because I'm also like, I was very frustrated at the fights that had to occur to get people who had earned benefits. And I imagine that's, and to see how easily corporate interests have infiltrated our process through lobbying. You know, the tax code isn't complex because working class people made it that way. You know, the regulations aren't complex and difficult to do because small businesses want that. That's all the result of corporate lobbies because they know how to game the system. How do we stop that part from infiltrating the part that you want to do?
So that's a really good question that I wish I had an answer to. I'm not sure that I do. I'm not sure that I do. What I do know is that we have, especially in the context of the 9/11 programs, the VCF, the World Trade Center Health Program, we have seen over and over and over again these responders who are sick go back to the Hill over and over and over to try to keep these programs funded.
It's happening again.
It's happening again.
This Wednesday, you know.
Yes.
This Wednesday, they're going to reintroduce some legislation to get funding.
Right. The World Trade Center Health Program is facing a crisis. It's still a few years out, and so that makes it hard for Congress to focus on it. But the fact of the matter is that if you don't know whether you're going to be funded a few years from now, you have to make decisions today about how many people you take into the program because you need to make the money sure that the money lasts. I had this exact same problem in 2018 when we reauthorized the VCF. I had to cut awards by 50% because we didn't.
In the middle of it. I remember that.
Because we didn't have enough money, and it was thanks to you and thanks to
get it. All those people, they were tireless, and many of them were very, very sick.
The responders
to give you a sense of what that is, in the middle of the VCF funding and the victims' compensation, if your cancer had just been, if you had the unlucky occurrence of having a cancer diagnosis in 2021 or 2019 when the fund had lost money, you wouldn't have gotten the full benefit because they had to resource guard. But that's what's happening.
Yes,
you had to resource guard.
Had to resource
it must have been heartbreaking.
But that is exactly what is happening to the World Trade Center Health Program right now.
Right.
And Dr. Howard, who was a Trump appointee, who was appointed who was reappointed to his position in the last part of the Trump administration, is going to have to make decisions very soon about how many people he can continue to allow into the program if they don't re-up the funding. And so members of Congress, including the New York delegations, are reintroducing that bill on Wednesday. It's already been agreed to twice and been stripped twice, once in 2022 and once just in December when the funding bill fell apart.
From an omnibus bill, they were going to sneak it into like a transportation bill or something along those lines.
So hopefully this time around, you know, these responders and these survivors, many of them have PTSD, many of them have very severe health conditions. Yeah. To have to go up again and again and again to ask for this funding is just unconscionable.
This isn't just this program. This is happening across government, and this is what we talk about when this system must be torn down. The idea that people who need the funding, that's what government exists to provide. It doesn't exist to provide a smoother road for McDonald's. It exists to provide for people, and it's got to change. And so I really appreciate you being on the show. And we're going to see, hopefully we can get that. Rupa Bhattacharyya, ladies and gentlemen.